Yesterday, if you missed, I showed you the absurd stuff coming out of CNN where Bernie Sanders has a bad poll in Iowa, even though he is recent polls leading in New Hampshire, Nevada, Colorado, tied for the lead in California, has a bad poll in Iowa. Is it time for Bernie Sanders to drop out? CNN says. And you're going to start hearing this more and more and more from the corporate media establishment. I don't hear them saying, is it time for Kamala Harris at 6% to drop out? America's mayor, Pete Buttigieg, is it time for him to drop out? Is it time for Andrew Yang, 3% to drop out? Is it time, maybe, I don't know, Michael Bennett, John Delaney? Who else am I forgetting? Is it time for some of those people? Cory Booker? Time for them to drop out? I don't know. Maybe they should be able to run their campaign. But Bernie Sanders, most donations of any candidate, individual donors in history, drop out. Drop out, drop out. Everybody else, well, they should give them some time, show support. Okay, so we established that yesterday. Go check out that video. Now, I said yesterday that to me, even though progressives want him to go after Elizabeth Warren, I don't think it's time for Bernie Sanders to go after Elizabeth Warren. Let other people go after Elizabeth Warren. I think Biden is going to start going after her. I think you might see Pete Buttigieg start going after her. I think Kamala definitely has to start going after her because Elizabeth Warren is taking the most voters from Kamala Harris. So let them go after Warren, and there's plenty to go after Warren on, which I've talked about at length. And I wanted to see Bernie Sanders aggressively go after Joe Biden. Well, I don't want to, be presumptuous, but I'm wondering if somebody from Bernie's campaign was watching me yesterday on the Sunday Marathon. Joe Biden has obviously been putting out this fakakta, as my dearly departed grandma used to say, this fakakta nonsense about Medicare for all, that it's going to raise your taxes, and people are going to lose their insurance, and, all this nonsense. And it's really kind of reminded me of Ronald Reagan's nonsense and absurdity and propaganda and fear-mongering in the 1960s about, oh my God, shining city on a hill, if we have socialized medicine, there will be no freedom. We will wake up to an Armageddon of epic proportions, Ronald Reagan used to say. And then Jen sent me this story before I went live, where Joe Biden is now just essentially enlisting polling firms on how best to knowingly lie about Medicare for all. It would be one thing if you just had different, disagreements. You're more of an incrementalist. You don't think people should get health care as a right. That's one thing. It's another thing to know you're lying. Go reach out to a polling firm to basically polish up your lies. Here's the thing. Joe Biden is now essentially, I think, worse than Ronald Reagan in terms of the fear-mongering about Medicare for all. But first, let me remind you, this is what Ronald Reagan said about the devastation, the Armageddon, the Chernobyl coming to America if original Medicare passed.
Government economy and fiscal responsibility, that you know that governments don't tax to get the money they need. Governments will always find a need for the money they get, and that you demand the continuation of our traditional free enterprise system. You and I can do this. The only way we can do it is by writing to our congressman, even if we believe that he's on our side to begin with, write to strengthen his hand, give him the ability to stand before his colleagues in Congress and say, I have heard from my constituents and this is what they want. Write those letters now, call your friends and tell them to write them. If you don't, this program, I promise you, will pass just as surely as the sun will come up tomorrow. And behind it will come other federal programs that will invade every area of freedom as we have known it in this country, until one day, as Norman Thomas said, we will awake to find that we have socialism. And if you don't do this, and if I don't do it, one of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Sorry about that. I was going for my claw. Oh my God! Remember that time when Armageddon was coming? socialized medicine. Oh my God, Chernobyl, Armageddon. That was Ronald Reagan from the 1960s, if you remember. Well, you know, Joe Biden taking a page. He's taking a page out of good old Ronald Reagan's book. Because if you listen to Joe Biden, I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible. He says, oh, $3 trillion. He says 150 million people will have their wonderful, altruistic, generous, employer-based health care taken away. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what Joe Biden is saying. So we know Joe Biden has been lying. We know that. So now Joe Biden is going around trying to find ways to better lie about Medicare for all, because this is all he has. Joe Biden is basically taking the playbook of Republicans, scare the living hell out of old people, and, you know, hope that they come out and force to vote for you against that boogeyman, Bernie Sanders. A firm linked to Joe Biden tested messages to undercut support for Medicare for all among Democrats. Here's what it found to be effective and ineffective at persuading 2020 primary voters. While I wait for the actual article, I could pretty much just give you what was said in the article. Joe Biden, his main pollster, Joe Biden's main pollster is essentially testing which messages will work against Medicare for all. And when they just asked, without twisting it, when they surveyed and polled different people to say, what do you think of Medicare for all? 70% of the people they survey are for Medicare for all. Then it goes down when they start tossing in this bad language about what, you know, would you be okay with having your health care taken away? So those key words, taken away, support goes down. Those key words, adding to the debt, placing a huge middle-class tax increase, then it goes down. No wonder, because most people just read what the polls say and think, oh, well, that's probably what would happen, because that's what they're saying, right? So you basically have Joe Biden trying his best to lie, trying his best to muddy the waters, because he knows the number one issue, judging by the midterm election exit polls, is health care. So if you have a growingly popular program, the only way you're going to defeat it is to lie out of your teeth. Excuse my French. Demonetized. So this is very nefarious. And now you have Bernie Sanders fighting back. And I love it. This is what I told him to do yesterday. Bernie Sanders tweets this out. It's unfortunate, but not surprising, that Biden's polling firm is helping distort Medicare for all. The truth, Medicare for all means no premiums, co-payments, or deductibles. It means everyone except the very wealthy will be paying far less than they do now for health care. His campaign also emailed out a statement. Senator Bernie Sanders on Monday released the following statement. Quote, it's unfortunate, but not surprising that Vice President Biden's polling firm is helping to distort what Medicare for all is about. My Medicare for all legislation eliminates all premiums, co-payments, deductibles, and out-of-pocket expenses that crush millions of Americans, which not only saves people money, it will allow all Americans to go to any doctor or hospital they want with no one expending more than $200 a year for prescription drugs. Let me be clear. Under my proposal, no one earning less than $29,000 will pay any new taxes, and for everybody else, except the very wealthy, what they will be paying in taxes will be far less than what they are currently paying for premiums, co-pays, deductibles, prescription drugs, and other healthcare expenses. Finally, Medicare for all will be a great deal for the American people. I love it. I love it. And I would like to see Bernie Sanders hit the television waves and make this message even more. Okay, I got the story for you now. And by the way, I left out the fact this poll that Joe Biden is putting out there is commissioned by none other than the Wall Street puppet organization Third Way, who suddenly is warming up to one Elizabeth Warren. Isn't that interesting? A new poll by a firm linked to Joe Biden is testing messages designed to undercut support among Democrats for Medicare for All. The survey, commissioned by the centrist, that's nonsense, they're Republicans, centrist Democratic think tank Third Way, found that primary voters start off favoring the government-run healthcare system by a margin of 70% to 21%. But they can be persuaded to oppose it, i.e., if you lie to them about it. The study showed that Democrats are most swayed by the arguments that the program would impose a heavy cost on taxpayers and threaten Medicare for senior citizens. The poll was conducted by Lisa Grove of Anzalone Grove Research. Her partner, John Anzalone, is the chief pollster and an advisor to Biden. Again, I have said this before. Some of you might not like it. And just to be clear, I am not calling for Bernie Sanders to borrow from Karl Rove politically. I'm just saying borrow for one short segment or one video, okay? Bernie, we need a whiteboard. We need a whiteboard. And on the left side, why don't you put, I don't know, $15,000 a year, okay? Which, on average, families are paying in somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 a year, depending on how large your family is, for health care, okay? So that's bucket A. That's just $20,000 a year. Bucket B, let's put it at $12,000 a year. I'm just making these numbers up. But $15,000 to $25,000 a year is an estimate of how much families pay per year in healthcare costs. Then you have what Bernie's talking about, which I would say would be about, depending on the family, $7,000 to $12,000 a year. You take this bucket away, and you should write this down on a whiteboard. You take that bucket away, and you're left with a tax cut, not a tax increase. This is a tax. It's just under a new name. Premiums, copays, deductibles, coinsurance. Put it away, get rid of it, and then all you have left is a modest increase in taxes, but your overall savings, it is a tax cut. This is not complicated to explain. I happen to be a visual person. I know a lot of other people are visual. So I think Bernie Sanders' campaign should get more visual on the difference and the fact that this is an overall tax saving. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.